Well, happy Friday, everybody. It's Friday where you are. It's actually Friday where I am, but I'm recording this a Friday ahead of time. We are now into chapter 4. So we just finished up chapter 7, and that was the hard stuff of this unit. So I think things get much, much easier now. We jump back into chapter 4. And I'm not sure why the author puts it in this order, but we had to cover chapter 7 with noun clauses in order for us to come back and take on what happens at the end of chapter 4. But I promise you this, chapter 4 is much easier. All right, so it's called transformational grammar, which sounds very bizarre. And look at Ted spinning around there. It's fantastic. We're going to take a look at the opening part of chapter 4, all about what we call sentence types. And these are things that you know already. We just never really have talked about like where these things come from. But you know the different types of sentences that we have. And so what we find is in transformational grammar, all that means is this is really the only chapter the author devotes to grammar 3, saying what goes on inside your head that helps you figure out how exactly something is formed, like from a declarative sentence into a question or to a command. So how do we do that? And so the author doesn't go real in depth with sort of like the cerebral part of what's going on in our brain, but she's basically saying really what's happening is we've taken every sentence and we've transformed it into something else. But what we can do is in reverse, take a sentence which has undergone some kind of transformation and bring it back to its regular form. So when I say the regular form, I'm going to mean the declarative form. So all 10 patterns that we've learned so far are in their declarative form. It's a basic sentence structure where the subject's first, verb is second, it's been conjugated, and on from there. But what we can do is we can take that declarative sentence, all 10 patterns, and we can actually make them undergo a transformation where we can make them into questions, or what we would call interrogatives. We can make them into an imperative sentence. And we can also make them into the exclamatory sentence. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down to just 3 short little videos about each of these 3 types. And in that way, in case you want to take on maybe sentence 1 or 2 on your modeling exercise, you have a better understanding how to take those on. All right, this is pretty easy stuff. So first off, they're going to be just empty interrogatives, which is a fancy word for saying questions. All right. And so there are basically 2 types of questions we have in English language. We have yes/no questions, and these are questions that basically the way they're formed that generate either an answer of yes or no. So may I go with you, or have you been reading my book? And so what we mean by transformational grammar is basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the sentence and we're going to transform it back into its declarative form. Because right now it's a little weird. You can see here the word may is actually sitting in front of the word I. So what we have to do is we have to kind of transform it back. In order for the sentence to be made from declarative into an interrogative, we had to transform and move this little verb around in order for it to form into a question. So really what you're saying is, I may go with you, but we've just transformed it around in order for it to become a question. Or what you're really saying is, you have been reading my book. But when I switch the order around, I can now make it into a question. We've just simply transformed it. So when we diagram, we never diagram it in its question form. We transform it back into a declarative form, and then we diagram it. All right, so I'm going to get out of the screen real fast just to take on this example sentence. So, for example, if I take on, have you been reading my book? Let's do this one. So I'm going to go, I'll work with blue. I don't mind working with blue. And so I'll go right here. Pretty easy. My subject is you. My verb is have been reading. I want you to notice one thing here. I want you to notice what I do with the word, with that letter H. Look at me capitalizing it. Crazy, right? But it's going to be really important, right? Particularly if you decide to do number 1 or 2 on your modeling exercise, is I want you to pay close attention that if the letter is capitalized in the original sentence, we capitalize it in our diagram. And so I'm going to capitalize that H in have. It's our only way really of knowing that I've actually created something which is not in its real declarative form. I'm not sure what letter I'm drawing here. There we go. I made it into a B. I salvaged it. All right. So we have book, and then we have my book. All right. I mean, it's so simple. So if you take on that sentence about, may I interest you in some green giant corn niblets, just make sure you capitalize the M in may. All right. And so when you transform it back into a regular declarative sentence, make sure that you have your subject first, your verb second, and go on from there. But capitalize the words which were originally capitalized. All right, pretty easy. Let me go back to my slides. Right. The other type of question that we have, seriously, Jeffrey? All right, there we go. The other type of question that we have are what we call WH questions, which I think is a stupid thing to say because not every question that starts with WH. There are questions that start with like if, or you can start a question with how, and so whatever. But WH questions, for the most part, a lot of these interrogatives start with WH. So where is dad going? Whose car are you taking? Which brand is cheapest? Once again, before you begin jumping right into a diagram with it, just transform it back into its declarative form. So we would say, dad is going where? or you are taking whose car. But you'll find this last one, you really can't move this guy around. There's no way of moving him around other than saying which brand is cheapest. Sometimes the way it's written is actually in its declarative form. But one thing that we had to do in chapter 7 before we could get to chapter 4 is we had to figure out what we're going to do with words like where and whose. And we learned that with our nominal clauses. We learned that words like where are adverbs, or word like whose is an adjective. So let me jump out of this screen real fast, take it back to a diagramming screen. All right, let's take on this one, which let's just do you are taking whose car. We'll do, that's an easy one. All right, so this guy up here, my subject is you. My whole verb is are taking. Direct object is car. But it's whose car. So the word whose is here, and you'll notice I'm also going to capitalize that H. I said H. I don't know my letters. My W in the word whose. I'm a genius. Let's try one more. Let's do a different color. Maybe I'll have better luck. Let's do dad is going where, or basically saying is where is dad going. So if I did this one, we would say my subject is dad. My verb is going. And then where tells me where. It's an adverb question. So I'm going to put it underneath the verb, and I'm going to capitalize the W. Got it right that time. Underneath that verb with where. All right, pretty easy stuff. So once again, if you're going to diagram number 1 or number 2 on your modeling exercise, that would be fine, but just make sure you capitalize the right word. And that's how we take on these interrogatives. All right, let's pause, and then we'll restart and take on the next type, which are going to be our imperatives. This is seriously the longest ending, bad ending to a video. Bad ending to a video.